Right. While China embarks on a major naval modernization program to enhance its ability to conduct operations globally, American sailors are being weighed down with non-combat related training and administrative burdens, according to a new report on Navy readiness. And by doing that, both Congress and Navy leaders risk sending them into battle less prepared and less focused than their opponents, according to the report, which was commissioned by a group of lawmakers. Now, the report also states, quote, while programs to encourage diversity, human sex trafficking prevention, suicide prevention, sexual assault prevention, and others are appropriate, they come with a cost. The non-combat curricula consume Navy resources, clog inboxes, create administrative quagmires, and monopolize precious training time, end quote. The report says such programs have made it very hard to maintain a focus on warfighting. Now, earlier, I guess it was last month, June the 22nd, during a Senate Armed Service Committee hearing, Senator Tom Cotton questioned Admiral Michael Gilday, who is the chief of naval operations, about the implementation of critical race theory in the Navy. It was a very interesting exchange, and I think very reflective of what we're going to talk about that was in this report. Play clip number 8, please.
Sir, I believe that we can trust them to read books like that and to draw reasonable conclusions.
Well, it's not just a matter of trusting them, it's a matter of how they spend their time. And you, as the Chief of Naval Operations, are suggesting in your professional reading list that it's a worthwhile endeavor for our sailors and ensigns to spend their time reading books like these, as opposed to, say, books on maritime strategy or basic seafaring skills, which also are included on your list. But there's plenty that are not included on your list that I think would also benefit them.
Joining me now to talk more about this, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, an Army veteran and a member of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, it's good to be back on with you.
That line of questioning from the committee last month makes a lot of sense now after reading the report of the fighting culture of the United States Navy surface fleet, because we've seen over the last decade or more a number of problems in the United States Navy in response to various situations that suggest we've got a problem. And this report highlights that.
Yeah, Tony, I commissioned this report that was conducted by former admirals in the Navy and general in the Marine Corps. This is not my language. This is not my words or views. We're simply kind of holding up a mirror to the surface Navy and listening to what dozens of experienced sailors and chiefs and officers have said. And it's that the Navy, the surface Navy, has lost its warfighting edge. This goes back many years. It probably goes back to 1991 with the loss of the Soviet Union as a pacing threat. It has gotten worse, I think, over the last few years. You've added even more requirements like that I discussed with the Chief of Naval Operations in the clip you just played. But we need a warfighting culture in our surface Navy. Look at some of the consequences of losing that edge. You had the USS Fitzgerald McCain running into other ships in the Western Pacific. The Bonhomme Richard went up in flames, and we lost that ship in the port in San Diego last year. You've had young officers of patrol craft in the Persian Gulf surrendering to Iranian ships. It is very dangerous that our surface Navy appears to have lost that warfighting edge when you consider that our main competitor, China, is on a crash course to build up its Navy, and a conflict with China would probably start and primarily remain a naval and aerial battle.
So, Senator Cotton, this raises a lot of questions for me. This required you commissioning this along with 3 other members of Congress. It was not a formal report that came from the Armed Services Committee of either the House or the Senate. How much more information is out there in the ranks of our military that would suggest we have a problem that we're just sweeping under the rug?
Tony, I can tell you that our office has received an outpouring of feedback from surface Navy sailors over the last week telling us that we are spot on, that this is exactly what they see, and that they are also very worried about it. Again, this is not really an ideological or even a partisan matter. These failures go back over multiple administrations. For instance, in the Bush administration, the Navy chose to essentially discontinue training for new surface warfare officers. They gave them a package of two dozen DVDs and sent them out to the fleet and said, study these on your downtime. We obviously would never do that for naval aviators or nuclear engineers, and we shouldn't do it with the surface Navy, which is the backbone of our fighting force. I've spoken with the Secretary of Navy nominee. He's a former ship commander himself. I think he saw the leading edge of this when he left the service during the Bush administration. But I told him that this really should be his legacy, is getting the Navy back in fighting trim.
So when we look at this report, and it's the surface Navy, so you've got the submarine, that's different. They're kind of treated differently. You've got your special forces, Navy SEALs, which you point out we've had some problems there in terms of leadership and standards of training. But then the naval aviators, but the surface Navy is what would fight a major war, which is what we would be facing with China. And all things point to the facts all point to the reality that we're not prepared for such a confrontation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm afraid so, Tony. There's the issue of our shipbuilding program and China's shipbuilding program, how they're starting to outpace us. But even with the ships we have or that we're building, we need a dynamic officer corps that is ready to lead in complex environments without admirals staring over their shoulder using modern information technology, which will probably be the first thing China would knock out in a naval battle, who are prepared to innovate and to lead their sailors to victory on this in any kind of surface battle, which is, again, it is the heart of the Navy. As you say, the submariners, the aviators, the special forces, the nuclear boomers, those are all separate communities. This focuses specifically on the biggest single community and the backbone of the Navy, the heart of any naval battle, which is our surface Navy. And there are real cultural problems in the way we've been raising up a generation of naval officers. There's going to have to be a lot of changes to fix those.
Maybe this is self-explanatory, but one of the top issues that was raised when I've read through the report, the specific issues was insufficient leadership focus on warfighting. So what are they focusing on if we're not focusing our military on fighting and winning wars?
Well, so you kind of outlined some of them there, Tony, in a quote from it. All these reports, all the training sessions, and of course it's gotten worse with things like critical race theory, which is bad in itself and what it teaches our sailors. But just take, say, human trafficking training. That is worthwhile. We should give all of our service members that. But unless you're in a country that has a specifically difficult problem with human trafficking, do you really need to spend much time on it other than telling sailors before they go on shore for shore leave, hey, don't engage in human trafficking, and if you see anything like it, report it to your chain of command and the authorities. That should probably solve the problem, not spending a half a day on a training session like that. And I can tell you, when I was in the Army, we saw this all the time. You pile all of these non-combat, non-operational administrative responsibilities onto troops, and you require them to sit through endless PowerPoint briefings, and it's just putting aside whether if they're teaching something that's bad on its own merits, like critical race theory, but it's just a major time suck and distraction when they could be focused on things like basic seafaring skills, which the officers in charge of the Fitzgerald and the McCain obviously lack to some degree. Or you hear some of the admirals who were around in the 80s, so they spent all their time studying the Russian Navy. They could pick out every naval ship just by its silhouette in the dark and tell you exactly what kind of munitions it's had on board. I don't think there's a lot of that happening right now in our surface Navy as it relates to China's Navy. Those are the things that they should be spending their time on, not this overwhelming burden of administrative reporting and training.
That's what I was thinking of as you were describing that back. It was a long time ago when I was in the Marine Corps, but it was in the 80s. Russia was our main adversary at the time, and I was in the anti-tank in the Marine Corps, and so we had flashcards. We had spare time. We would have flashcards to identify the silhouette of different tanks. So we would know where the ammunition was, we would know where the fuel was, we would know how long it'd take for the turret to turn around and lock in on a target. That's what we studied. I cannot remember, frankly, anything other than our mission-oriented purpose. I don't remember all of these extraneous things. Of course, maybe I slept through them, but I don't recall them.
No, those are great. Yeah, those are great examples, Tony. And our surface Navy should be doing that as it relates to China's Navy and secondarily to Russia's Navy. They shouldn't be sitting around having book clubs on Ibrahim Kendi's latest book. They shouldn't be dedicating, as we said in the report, hundreds of hours to all these administrative reports. And again, when I was in the Army, we were in the middle of two wars. We touched on a lot of the issues that you mentioned in that clip, but we didn't spend hours and hours on them. We highlighted the issues to our troopers. We told them what to do under certain circumstances, and then we moved back to the rifle range or the land navigation range or to the first aid class. Things that would help our soldiers fight and win in war, hopefully deter the war from happening in the first place.
So, Senator Tom Cotton, as you commissioned this report, and you've you've spent time going over it, you've talked with those that compiled the report. Any surprises when you first saw this report that really jumped out at you?
So, Tony, I wish I could say I was surprised. I would say the report is, as I told the authors of it, it is outstanding but disappointing because it confirmed what I suspected, is that there was a cultural problem in the surface Navy. I mean, they have lost a capital ship, worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on average every 16 months for the last several years. Those are not isolated incidents. When the Fitzgerald and McCain are running into other ships and the Bonhoeffer Shard burns up in port and young officers are surrendering to basically Iranian fishing boats, I did not think those were isolated events, and this report simply confirmed my suspicions.
So what is the way forward? I mean, this is a very serious matter, and I want our listeners to understand this, that, we have a military for a purpose. And I know that the left likes to use that military to advance their social agenda. We saw that under the Obama administration. We're now seeing this under the Biden administration. But you do that at the risk of leaving your nation unprotected or inadequately protected. How do we fix this?
So there's some things that Congress can do, and I'm committed to that. So, for instance, one problem that I mentioned and that the report mentions is deferred and inadequate maintenance, which leads to soldiers having ships that are not prepared to fight. And that often is because we don't have enough ships. So ships get held over in the Western Pacific or in the Persian Gulf or the Mediterranean for an extra month, an extra 45 days. That throws off their maintenance program, which then throws off their training program for the next deployment, shortchanges our sailors in training. So Congress can mandate, for instance, that the Navy not only publish a maintenance schedule, but require updates to it. That kind of scrutiny often solves the problem. But a lot of this, Tony, is a leadership issue, and it has to be led from the top. And that's why I've stressed to the nominee to be the Secretary of Navy that he is uniquely positioned, I think, to help solve this problem as a former ship commander himself and someone who said that he saw the early stages of some of these challenges when he left the surface Navy almost 20 years ago.
Senator Tom Cotton, I want to commend you for taking the initiative to commission this report. It's very insightful, as you said, disturbing, but hopefully it'll awaken some people to the need of focusing on at least this aspect of our military for now. But maybe we can move on to other branches of the service as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me.